am Alia Martin and welcome to this special edition of National Focus as Dominica braces for Tropical Storm Brett as a tropical storm watch is issued for the island. The details when we return. Welcome back. A tropical storm watch has been issued for Dominica as Tropical Storm Brett approaches. Citizens are being encouraged to take all the necessary precautions to safeguard themselves, their families, and their property. As of 5 p.m. today, Tropical Storm Brett is located at 12.2 degrees north, 48.6 degrees west, about 835 miles east of the Windward Islands. Maximum sustained winds are at 45 miles per hour with present movement at 18 miles per hour. Minister for National Security Honorable Raven Blackmore says citizens should closely monitor the progress of the storm.
In this regard, residents should closely monitor updates to the forecast for Brett and have the hurricane plans in place. Both the Office of Disaster Management and Med Service have been providing the general public with information and updates on this weather system. Further, an emergency meeting was held today with the critical committees of the National Emergency Planning Organization to include the police, fire, health, agriculture, utilities, shelter supply, and med services, and reports were heard. The National Emergency Planning Organization is therefore in a state of readiness.
The National Security Minister reassured citizens that all the relevant institutions are prepared and on alert for the storm progress.
The general public is being asked to continue to monitor the progress of this tropical storm and is being encouraged and advised to finalize preparation activities. All emergency services, including utility companies, are in a state of readiness and have been placed on alert with immediate effect. Additional information will be provided to the general public as time progresses. Again, let me emphasize that we should take this system seriously and embark on our preparation activities.
The Fisheries Division of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy is advising fishers, divers, and small craft operators to secure all fishing equipment, especially boats, fishing gear, outboard engines, and other equipment to avoid unnecessary damage and loss. Mariculture operations should ensure lines are removed and stored securely away from surges and waves. Aquaculture farmers are asked to take precautions to mitigate flooding impacts from heavy rains, secure equipment, feed and other supplies for their operations, and store water for use after any event. Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Blue and Green Economy, Honorable Roland Royer, says his ministry is putting all plans in place to deal with the threatening weather.
For the crop farmers, we encourage them to ensure that their records first are being kept safely. All drains and culverts around the farms unblocked to reduce the risk of flooding. And if any overhang trees that are close to the farm infrastructure as well should be pruned and cleaned and disposed of properly. In particular, the livestock farmers, we ensure that they reinforce their pens, and if they have animals that are tied and not in pens, we encourage them to secure them safely or to have them loose in case of heavy rains and flooding, particularly in lowland areas. We saw what happened in some rain events last year in Cassie Bruce, where we had a lot of animals tied along the stretch. and we've lost them. So in areas that they can't do better in securing them in resilient infrastructure, we ask that they let them loose, so the animals can take care of themselves. In addition to that, we have the fishery sector, where we asked our fisher folks to listen to the advisories and when instructed to pull up the boats on shore in a safe place, in safe land, so that it won't be lost by heavy sea swells and with actions. So generally, we have already transmitted information to the critical stakeholders in the sector, and our extension officers outside monitoring to make sure that they're doing what they're instructed to do.
Farmers and fisher folks are also advised to continue to listen to the media and pay attention to any updates from the Dominica Met Services. Acting Director of Primary Healthcare, Dr. Lenora Fevrier-Drago, says preparations for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season commenced in January of this year, while the Ministry of Health disaster plan was activated earlier this month. The health system stands ready to deal with Tropical Storm Brett should it impact the island.
We have 7 disaster plans for the district, obviously based on their vulnerabilities. So the preparedness part of this disaster plan has been activated, and I'm speaking of the pharmacies ensuring that all drugs are procured and distributed to the different catchment areas. I'm speaking of our vehicles being topped off with petrol, our storage of petrol for our generators. Our generators have been checked and made fairly functional. The areas that have water tanks, we've emptied those, cleaned those out and refilled them. And so now we have our personnel on the ground as of this week, and what we're doing is actually doing visits to our shut-ins to ensure that they are properly taken care of in terms of their medication, and those that need dressings that would not be able to get a dressing maybe tomorrow or on Wednesday for chronic wounds. We're ensuring that this gets done between today and Wednesday, or at least Thursday morning for the latest.
Utility companies are also in preparation mode. General Manager of the Dominica Electricity Services Limited, DOMLEC, Mrs. Bertilia Mackenzie, says DOMLEC began preparations early ahead of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season, and the company stands ready for the impending storm. She says with the revision and implementation of DOMLEC's hurricane manual, all internal departments have taken the necessary measures for hurricane preparedness.
DOMLEC has a hurricane manual, and every year we review it and we revise it if required. And so how did we start? We started last year. Because of supply chain issues, we needed to bring in to Dominica very early all of the materials that we would need for the hurricane season. So we started the process last year in the last quarter with the procurement. Other than that, from the first quarter and even this second quarter, what we've done is to implement the hurricane manual, which tells us every single thing that we have to do per department: the generation department, the engineering, transmission, distribution department, the commercial department, IT, HR, accounts. All departments know what they have to do, and they just basically go through the plan.
After the passage of Hurricane Maria in 2017, DOMLEC has taken steps to increase the resilience of Dominica's electricity grid.
After Hurricane Maria, what we did, when we built back, we started to build back better. So in terms of how we guide the wires, we did that, and we strengthened that. In terms of the class of poles, that we moved to a higher class of poles, a stronger type of poles. So that was done. From the generation standpoint, when we build back the man unit compound, we put it to be hurricane resistance up to Cat 5, and so that was done. So a number of things that we've done to make the system, the transmission and distribution system, more resilient, as well as the generation system as well.
Mrs. Mackenzie highlighted 2 important safety tips to follow during the tropical storm.
But one of the things we want to say first and foremost is that when there are down power lines, that persons are not to touch them because they may be live. So you want, And if you see any issues, then you put off your main switch. That's one of the things we say to persons in general. And if you have to put on a generator, you have to be very careful that it doesn't feed back onto our lines. And also for yourself as well, you don't put it indoors so that the exhaust affects you adversely. You put it so that the exhaust can go to the outside. So these are just some of the safety tips. But you can find a number of our safety tips on our Facebook page.
Dominica exhorts customers to stay away from fallen power lines and encourages the public to follow their Facebook page for more hurricane preparedness tips.
One of the things we want to say to the customers is that we are committed to providing the service. It's an essential service. However, we have to be guided by safety principles. Once the feeder goes off, it will stay off until we're doing the restoration. And even when we start the restoration, we have to do what we call scouting to determine whether or not the lines are in fact healthy or not. And if they're not healthy, then we have to work on them. The healthy ones, we'll bring them back on. But as we have to always ensure the safety of our employees, because we know the commodity that we're dealing with, it's a very dangerous commodity, and the customers as well.
Meanwhile, DOWASCO continues to prioritize the importance of access to clean and safe water during the hurricane season. The company has learned from the experience of Hurricane Maria in 2017 and other recent trough systems, and as a result has heightened their preparedness.
So basically, we have had meetings with our staff, which is the first part of the plan, to tweak the plan to ensure that everybody is familiar with what we have to do. Key among that would be to try to preserve whatever water we have in storage prior to an event so that immediately after we can restore clean water to consumers while we take the necessary repairs and to any damages that we may have suffered. So we have had those meetings with our staff, with our caretakers, prepare them as to how we monitor the systems. We do have a plan as to what time, so if a warning is issued, at what time we would switch off the supply from our storage, so that and the purpose for that really is, even if the supply and storage could continue for a couple of hours, a few hours, but we would really like to preserve what is there so that after the event people can have clean water to cover their daily lives. So because we rely on surface water, what we do is we monitor closely the information coming from the Office of Disaster Management, coming from the Met Services, and the various advisories and directive from the governments. And so we have the schedule as to when we shut the systems down, and once an all clear is given, when we reopen them, and so forth. Even prior to an event as well, among the things that we do is to try to make sure that all generators are in order, and we have already done that, to make sure that all our staff are sensitized. We try to work with the village councils. We do inspections at various health centers, the hospitals, other places of importance. Well, I mean, everything is important, but other priority areas throughout Dominica, to make sure that we assist persons then in getting ready for any eventualities.
DOWASCO maintenance vehicles will be stationed at various locations across the island in the event that an area becomes impassable and water access needs to be restored. The East Coast remains one of the most vulnerable areas in Dominica. DOWASCO is putting measures in place to bring comfort to the people.
We do have a challenge on much of the East Coast, Cassie Bruce, Monjon, River Syric, and some of these areas there. Even during the time of no disaster, we had to be trucking water and doing some of the very same things that we would have to continue doing in the event of a disaster. So as part of our continuity of operations plan, we have in there some built-in measures targeting the East Coast. For example, we would have one of our water trucks, our 2,000-gallon trucks, stationed in what we perceived to be a very safe community, let's say La Plaine at this point in time, that could easily move between River Syric, Monjon, La Plaine, Dailies, and so on, to bring some relief to the people. We also have mobile filtration plants that we would certainly have stationed in one of those communities, where we could purify water and make it available to persons who would come with their pickup trucks, you know, their tanks, whatever it is, and benefit from some water there. Importantly is to empower people, to provide information to them so that they would know how they can move and how, you know, during that time. I'm happy to report that we were just last week, we were able to restore or to build a new intake, very temporary, to serve the people of Monjon. And we're happy for that because, you know, the people have suffered quite a bit. So we just did a new intake. I mean, it's unfortunate we are looking at that kind of weather situation now. But so hopefully with that we'll be able to have the storage tanks filled prior to any event. And so people would have some water to meet their needs immediately after the event.
Citizens are reminded of the importance of storing water during the hurricane season. Heavy rainfall usually results in an increase in turbidity or impurity. High turbidity will result in more frequent water interruptions. Store water for your emergency use.
This is a time when we always advise the public that storage of water is important. You may not be able to use it to drink or to cook if, you know, depending on how you store it, depending on if you probably even catch some rainwater, but you can at least flush and clean and do those things to help your life easier. I do not expect everybody, I do know that everybody can in fact buy a storage tank of 600 gallons capacity or 800 gallon capacity, but I believe everybody can find some ways to store some water to make life easy, you know, for them, or much easier for them than if they have none. Of course, you know, the purchase of drinking water is always a necessity, but we can help ourselves, all of us, by storing some water to take care of those kinds of disaster in those times, you know. And I really want to encourage persons to do that.
Follow DOWASCO's Facebook page and website for any updates on water systems and tips to treating water before use. Always remember that boiling your water can help with disinfection. It is a good emergency procedure for small quantities of water. DOWASCO is encouraging the general public to remain safe during this time. Parliamentary representatives across the island are on high alert as Tropical Storm Brett approaches Dominica. Cabinet concluded early on Tuesday to give parliamentary representatives an opportunity to head to their constituencies to oversee preparations ahead of the storm. A number of representatives spoke with GIS, saying while final preparations are taking place, they are satisfied with what has already been done. Meetings were planned with disaster communities, village councils, and community groups.
I've already had communications with the various village councils, that is the one at Dubla and the one in Coliho. Contacted the police, the nurses, the Constituency Association, all the persons that would be required, like the heavy equipment operators, general people with just information, stakeholders. We all getting together this evening at 6 o'clock at the Coliho Primary School, where we will put together constituency-wide and a village-specific plan of action to make sure that not just that we are taking care of the vulnerable and the dangerous areas and so on, but that everybody is fully aware of what everyone else is supposed to be doing and is required of them.
Our disaster committees have already been activated and has been activated as of June 1st, and we have put all preparations in place. Our nurses are on standby, our police officers are on alert, and everybody is aware of what they have to do. As it relates to our supplies, we are ensuring that everyone is equipped with what they need for this hurricane season and the upcoming storm. So we're well prepared and we're well informed. To encourage everyone to ensure that your documents are safe, that your house is in order, and whatever needs to be done for this hurricane season, that you get it done before.
We have engaged the hamlets across this constituency, and to get them ready to be able to manage and maintain the emergency shelter. So that already gave us a foothold in preparing for the hurricane season. And so what we're doing later on today, we'll be meeting as a team to ensure that all our systems are in place. We have had training in the past couple of weeks with ODM in VHF and ham radio operations. And so this afternoon we are just really tidying up, making sure we cross all the T's, dot all the I's, because we are ready. And across the constituency we have two major councils, the Canago Council and the Atkinson Village Council. They are both on board. The councillors have been engaged in meeting community members. We're in touch with our nurses, our police officers. The hurricane shelter managers are also on board. So this afternoon at 4 o'clock we'll be meeting all of the stakeholders to ensure that we are prepared. And even if the weather doesn't affect us as badly as a Hurricane Maria, but we think it's important at various occasions and to meet and discuss our readiness.
We identify our vulnerable people, where they are located, their contact numbers, get a list of all of them who may likely require any type of relocation, and to identify the various bus drivers or people with private vehicles who can be called upon to transport our people at risk. So that is the purpose of our meeting. We're certainly not letting our guard down at all, and we want to use this opportunity to review our disaster plan for our area and ensure everyone knows clearly what is the role pre-disaster and even during the disaster and post-disaster.
I spoke to the different leads and heads in the constituency, our disaster coordinator on ground. I spoke to the police response for the area, the nurse as well, and of course the village council chairmen and members. On my way down this afternoon, I'm going to do a drive-through for the constituency to make sure everything is in place and to check on the most vulnerable in the constituency to see if they need anything that we could assist with. And so far we've already activated our plan on the ground, and we're just hoping for the best. I know the impending weather has changed some costs, but we hope that it remains where it is and don't come up too much, because we really can't afford that. But generally we're doing fine and in preparation. And there are a few areas that we are doing some clearing, some ravines in Kakowell, that's around the Para Bridge, and some storm drains inside Gota Lago area we're working on as we speak.
The communities of Cassie Bruce and Good Hope are among those more vulnerable to natural disasters. Following the devastating impact of last year's trough system, government has been implementing measures to include the East Coast Road project to reduce that vulnerability. Residents of both communities are making final preparations for any impact from Tropical Storm Brett, which is forecast to start affecting the region by Thursday.
First of all, we just had some shelter management or management team meeting and training. That was last Monday. And we had 2 days, or Monday and Tuesday, and where we got most of what you would require to prepare you, or to prepare a shelter, a hurricane shelter for any storm, or not only a hurricane shelter, but a disaster shelter. And that big disaster shelter that you'd see up on the main road going into the territory, that's where we had that training, and that training took 2 days. And they just had again some radio people training radio operators for disaster. And there was again a simulation of how to get yourself ready or to manage yourself in a disaster.
A stakeholders meeting was planned for Tuesday afternoon in Castle Bruce.
All stakeholders, firemen, policemen, fisher folks, all the heavy equipment people, and teachers and farmers, and everybody will be coming together in that stakeholders meeting to prepare us for the oncoming storm that we know that is coming. Whether it comes or not, preparation is key, and we are getting ourselves ready with this or for that storm.
He says there is increased resilience built into the housing stock in Castle Bruce since Hurricane Maria.
The qualities of the building in Castle Bruce and its environment, I believe it's much, much better than Maria. In Maria, we had so many vulnerable people, and the buildings were not up to standard. They were not, they could not withhold a hurricane. But right now, we have quite a lot of people that have their own, some of them have built their own bunkers, some government have built houses that are hurricane kind of resistant, if you'd call it that. And as you can see, we have this big building at the back here where there is, I think, 65 families that will not have to move to a shelter. They are here And thanks to the government of Dominica for preparing that. And most people that the houses, that government helped them build houses, which are not the shelter, are also prepared or built in a way to withstand at least category 4 hurricane.
Meanwhile, chairman of the Good Hope Village Council, Achille Grove, says for the most part, his community is prepared.
A lot is happening right now because we have to really prepare, and there's a lot on the media, and we have to try to make sure that we pass this information on to the community accurately, and to make sure that they are ready when we decide to execute our plans. The fact is, I think that we are somewhat ready. I can't say we are 100% ready, because in Good Hope we do not have a shelter anymore. Our shelter is completely compromised, and we will be moving to Castle should there be warning, and then we have to move. So it will be a little bit more difficult for us from previous years, where we had the resource center as our shelter. But now we have to move to the regional shelter in Castle if that have to happen.
Mr. Grove, who is also the deputy chairperson of the disaster committee for the district, says moving residents to the regional emergency shelter in Castle could pose some challenges.
It's going to be very challenging, because if we have to move from Good Hope to Castle, it would mean we would have to engage a lot of private vehicles to move people. And we have to also take into consideration that we have to cross rivers and maybe possibly slides. So it is going to be very challenging for the community of Good Hope if we have to move from the community.
Mr. Grove says if it becomes necessary, they may have to move all the people for their safety.
In Good Hope, we're looking at about 350 people if we have to move everybody, because Good Hope now is a red zone because of previous experiences with hurricanes and trough and tropical storms and that kind of thing. So I want to think that if it gets serious, we may have to move the entire community.
And that's all for this edition of National Focus. Be sure to follow GIS Dominica on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter. You can also drop us an email at gis@dominica.gov.dm. From all of us here on the GIS News Production team, I'm Aaliyah Martin. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay safe.